Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Peter Teresi. Peter is a co-founder and chief executive officer at Certificial, which is a leading dynamic certificate of insurance platform. Peter, thank you for coming to our interview today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Peter, is a very interesting topic and your specific niche. So could you please tell us a short story about maybe in the beginning your career path, what brought you to where you are right now, and what is this market of a certificate of insurance means? And then we can go further to your specific solution.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, so I've look at myself, today still as more of a technologist than anything. I kind of started my career working in technology and for some of the bigger tech companies, but I did quickly end up transitioning into the insurance space. So I've been now in insurance and working in insurance for almost 18 years, I believe. Goes by pretty quick. But, when I got introduced into the insurance industry, in fact, the certificate of insurance process was pretty much there from day one, because I started my career in insurance, that is, with an organization named Accord, which you may or may not be familiar with, Boris, but Accord is a standards body here in the U.S., but they actually create standards throughout various other countries as well. So throughout my time, I was originally a CTO there, but I eventually became responsible for standards globally. And certificates of insurance is one of the very first standards and assets that Accord created back in the 70s. And so, still widely utilized today, probably one of the most, highest transacted standards, in fact, especially here in the States. So it just became a point of conversation almost on a day-to-day basis as I interact with members. That's what we call them at Accord. We have members, kind of like you guys do. And those members, usually consist of agents, brokers, carriers, and now, solution providers like myself included. And when you have these conversations with these individuals, certificates of insurance come up all the time. And what that really says to me is that it's a real operational challenge within the insurance industry. And it's a challenge that extends far beyond the insurance industry, because we have to remember that certificates of insurance only exist because a third party to a policyholder, has a need or requirement really to know that someone they are working with is properly covered, has the proper level of insurance, right? In a homeowner situation, you want to know someone's insured before they climb on your roof and do work, right? And in a corporate, type of environment, before let's, go the technology route, before I let, a technology vendor in my data center, I want to know that they're properly insured with cyber and many other types of coverages that I need to do to protect my financial interests in order to partner with any other, B2B type of situation. So, insurance verification exists for that purpose. And the method in which it's been transacted and really executed has been the certificate of insurance. We could dive a little bit more into, the process and how it began and evolved, but that's a little bit about my career journey. And as you can see, it's been a very natural progression going from technology to insurance, being very, very close to certificates of insurance, and now creating Certificial to really help move the insurance industry forward and really help increase the level of protection that organizations can really achieve by making sure that other individuals they conduct business with are properly insured.
Interesting. So what is your business model and how are you different from competition? Because if I understand correctly, it's a kind of covering third-party risk or something similar.
Yeah, no, you're pretty much spot on. Well, I mean, let's take a look at the landscape as it exists for the moment. And one of the reasons why I felt the need to create Certificial was because when you look at the current landscape and you look at the solutions that are currently in the marketplace, there's almost nothing. I think we're the only company, in my opinion, that we really look at this from end to end. We look at this process as an entire workflow, and we solution for that entire workflow. And why that may sound completely normal, like why wouldn't anything else work just that way? When you do dive deeper and you really get into the complexities, I kind of understand why solutions have been created the way they have been, but I think they've created a level of disparate communication and as a result. So what I mean by that is when you look at the insurance industry, what you'll find are solutions that are really geared towards servicing the agent, the producer, the insurance producer, and their customer, right? And that's usually, in most cases, when we're talking about certificates of insurance, we're talking about commercial line business. Certificates of insurance have a life and personal lines insurance, but it's not the same beast to tackle as it is in the commercial lines. And when you're looking at it from an insurance perspective, it's kind of like the journey ends at the policyholder, their client. I just need to create the certificate. I need to get it out the door. And once I do that, I've served my portion of the process. And so most of the technology that we see in the insurance industry pretty much begins and ends at that stage. But there's another leg to that journey. There's still the communication to the actual recipient. And right now, that's all done by PDF documents for the most part. That's pretty much what the evolution has been. If you go back to 1970, I want to say 4, when the certificate was first introduced and created, it was printed, faxed, and mailed. Sadly, it is still printed, faxed, and mailed today. But the large majority of that has transitioned over to email and PDF. That's about as much of technology adoption and transformation that's gone into it. And so as a result of that, when you go to the other end of the process flow, you're on the receiving side. This is where we call them certificate holders. They are the ones actually requesting evidence and proof of another third party's insurance. When they receive these PDFs or these documents in the mail, they need a way to bring it into a risk management system. So there's all sorts of technology that's been created, driven by people, driven by AI now is the new modern way of doing things, right? Mm-hmm. And it's all about consuming that data, those documents, and getting the data off the forms and into a system so that you can do something systematic with it, whether it's comparing against requirements, looking and detecting deficiencies. You don't want just to have physical eyes on the document. You want to bring it into a computer system that's able to do another layer of, of review that, you technically don't need a physical person. You can automate so much through technology. And so now you've got all these solutions on this end. But the problem with this flow is that we are taking data from a system, using a document as a transmission method to send it, only to use more technology to turn it back into data. And so given the fact that it's no longer 1970 and it is 2022, why are we not just having system communication? Why are we not taking data and having a digital experience where we don't need to use documents and do a conversion? Because when you introduce that document into that process flow, you introduce point in time information, because there's no continuation. It's only as current as that day. So right off the bat, how compliant are we really, right? Because really we're looking at a snapshot of insurance. We're looking at insurance as it existed today. But if I don't pay my premiums or I make changes in my policies next week, that's not reflected, right? You don't know about that. So you're still looking at that old cert going and making business decisions on it. And meanwhile, it's out of date, right? So that's kind of the current landscape. And that's pretty much what gets transacted, day in and day out. And it's just a pretty legacy type of workflow, quite honestly. It's ripe for innovation and modernization for sure.
Mm-hmm. So based on this, that you are trying to innovate, I would like to ask you a personal point of view. What is the commonly held belief as it relates to the insurance industry, or maybe in specific your branch of insurance, that you are strongly or even passionately disagree with?
It's a good one. So in this particular process flow, I strongly disagree that it actually has value in its current state. And that's a rather kind of bold and strong statement, quite honestly, to be so close to certificates of insurance for so long. But I make this statement, and I make it on many of the conversations I have, whether I'm speaking to the insurance industry or I'm speaking to certificate holders. Going back to the point in time nature of that document, that means that you as a certificate holder, you have 1 day, if you're lucky, and I'll comment on the luck part of compliance. You know what this insurance looked like for 24 hours at best. And the luck part is there's a lot of fraud that goes on in this space. And I know your audience, spans, far outside the US. And the truth is, the more you get out of the big insurance industries in Europe and the US, and you start looking into, some other countries, that fraud just continues to raise and goes higher and higher. And I work with those cert holders all day that are they're more concerned in the validity of the document and where it actually was produced, more so sometimes than the content even on it, first and foremost. So when you think about, the fact that these cert holders are really only receiving very, very low compliance, and you look at the amount of effort that goes into this, it's honestly, I'd want to say it's hardly worth the effort in its current format. And that's the reason why we're not looking to put a Band-Aid on this problem when we created Certificial. We're looking to really be transformative from the ground up here, because this is a process flow that is fundamentally flawed. And insurance agents and brokers, if you're wearing that insurance hat, any agent or broker watching this show or listening to this right now, they're thinking E&O exposure. I haven't said it yet, but I can guarantee it's the first thing in their mind, because for every certificate of insurance that the insurance industry issues, they take on a lot of E&O exposure, and not for 1 day. 365 days out of the year, they take that E&O exposure on. For that 1 day of compliance that cert holder potentially receives, the amount of risk that gets introduced into the insurance industry is incredibly high. So think about how that, that's it's kind of an interesting point, right? It's like we're doing this to eliminate risk, and we're actually eliminating very little risk for the cert holder as because of the point in time nature, but we're actually introducing a whole nother layer of risk to the insurance industry. That's why it doesn't work the way it's currently being processed.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting comparison. So, Peter, could you perhaps share with us something you or your team have recently achieved that you are really proud of?
Yeah, no, I'm proud to. I mean, it's always nice to go to that kind of end state, because we could talk about all the inner workings and how all this comes together. But you're right. It's when you see the end result that honestly is your most proud, that proud moment where you can say, okay, this is what all the work and all the energy went into. And honestly, I'd probably say that, that moment occurs quite often. And it's when we see the technology that we've created prevent an uninsured activity. That to me is kind of the end result. That's what this process was designed to do. And so because we're a digital first, type of environment, we provide a digital first experience to all the participants and users. That means that our data is current, it's real time. In many cases, you're not, we support certificates of insurance. We can get into all that. We call them dynamic COIs because the data is always current. It's always down to the, literally never more than minutes at a date. So because we're dealing with data that's current, that's giving businesses the ability to make more informed decisions throughout the day, throughout the week, right? So because now I have this data and I can pull it into other systems that help me or help staff and employees be informed. So to give you an example, the one that we like to give too, that we are proud of, we have a case study being released on this very soon, is work with a large shipping company, right? They do a lot of ground shipping, and at their loading docks, they are making decisions now that are current, that are down to the minute. That when a vehicle comes, they're able to scan that vehicle, retrieve the vehicle VIN number, and they're able to check to make sure that the proper insurance is indeed intact at that moment before they go and load cargo on that commercial truck, so that it can go and then do its delivery. And knowing that, or knowing that the insurance is not in place, is really what allows us to actually prevent uninsured activities. And where some vehicles unfortunately did not leave a loading dock, they didn't leave rightfully so, because there was an issue with insurance and it was detected before that vehicle was on the road. And this is something that, the certificate of insurance may be evidenced properly 3 and 6 months ago, but as they check it right there in real time, you see the current situation and it may not actually meet the current requirements. So that's, I think that's when we're really seeing the results here, because the fact that that data is near real time is what's allowing for those in more proper level of decision making to really happen at these organizations. And going back to the insurance industry, that's helping the insurance industry as well. I mean, knowing that organizations can look at information that's current and it's not out of date is actually what's reducing the E&O exposure for the insurance industry. So this is a win-win for all parties involved, where right now it's a bit of a risk and a challenge.
Yeah, fantastic. And looking broadly into your industry, what are the major trends in your space that you expect will take place in the coming few years?
Yeah, I mean, since Certificial sits between so many industries, if I had to classify us into one, right, it would be technology, but I think it's too broad to provide a response around that. So when I think about more specific to insurance, technology, and really the space that we really sit within, which is bridging the gap between the insurance industry and almost every other vertical, I think the real change that's going to take place, and I see it right now, is much more of an open architecture platforming from the various insurance systems. I can safely say, Certificial 10 years ago probably wouldn't be possible because everything was so closed off. The whole idea of APIs, the idea of even real partner type community and network adoption in the insurance industry was it's a challenge today, but it was much more difficult than now. There's a lot of new participants that have come in to designing technology, thinking open architecture, thinking about partnerships, embracing this, realizing that it's really in the end what's best to service the client and to service the industry. And I think that change in mentality and that change in approach is going to really help the insurance industry innovate and really move ahead, because it's held it back. It really has. I mean, I've been hearing for my entire career about how we're going to do things different in insurance, and we're not. Right? It's still very paper driven. It's still very archaic in a lot of its process flows. And I think that really was a big factor in really holding back. It's not that there's not a desire to move forward. There's been limitations in how we can go about doing that. And I see those limitations being broken down little by little. And I think that's going to really help the industry move forward, which will have a benefit to honestly to all organizations. Everyone's dealing with insurance in some capacity, right?
All right. So if we summarize it in summary, if someone who is listening to this interview would like to walk away with one or two major takeaways, what would that be? So,
I think learning a little bit about Certificial is going to be beneficial for all organizations. Knowing where we sit and how we differ in this process flow, right? We talked a little bit earlier about how there's technology in the insurance industry and there's technology that's servicing certificate holders. What Certificial is really achieving and doing is we call ourselves a smart COI network, COI for Certificate of Insurance. And, we're really creating and bridging a gap between the collective industries that are looking to monitor and verify insurance. So for us, we are servicing this process end to end. So if you are an insurance agent, and I can almost guarantee if you're dealing with commercial lines business, you have operational challenges, you have challenges with customer satisfaction, because a cert from a policyholder perspective it can stand between them commencing work and getting paid. It's a very sensitive situation between an agent and a client, is making sure that there's continued customer satisfaction. There's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into it, but there's a lot of challenge. We can help with that. Right. That's one of the things that our product does. It really helps with efficiency, and it really helps create a great customer experience for your clients. So if you're an insurance agent, broker, Certificial can be a huge help to you. And if you're on the other side of this, the certificate holder side, we have our product is also designed as an enterprise compliance management system, but we're all API driven. So even there's, people ask all the time, how do you compete with this one? How do you compete with that one? We don't. That's one of the ideas of Certificial is we're a network. We're actually here to enable a lot of the companies that some may think we compete with. We actually have all the APIs and we say, no, you need the data as much as anybody else. So we're very neutral. We're very agnostic when it comes to how we situate ourselves. So vendor management systems, if you're in the risk management space and you're a solution provider servicing the risk management community, Certificial can help. We can help streamline and automate by opening up our APIs to those organizations as well. We have over 10,000 agents and brokers active on Certificial right now. So there's a lot of data flowing and there's a lot of value that we can bring to the risk community as a whole, whether you sit in the insurance space or on the receiving side of management.
Oh, so you're managing a lot community, like we managing as a kind of more or less like a social networking. You are managing it as like insurance community, right?
That's correct. Yeah, no, you're spot on. It's exactly right.
So maybe you can share with us some tips how we at Global Risk Community can contribute to better understanding of this complex world of risk management.
Yeah, right. I hear you. So, I mean, if it comes down to contacting Certificial too, right? I mean, it's we do demos, we do webinars where we kind of dive into these topics a little bit more, get into some real details, show the technology and the system and how it can really evolve a lot of these processes, and even the whole concept of a dynamic COI, right, which we've kind of touched on. But here in the U.S., insurance can only be evidenced on one of those Accord forms, and it's there for compliance and regulatory reasons, and it's a good thing. But again, like, we make sure that our technology complies with all of those regulations by continuing to use those standards. So I went from working for Accord to being a solution provider. I'm now a member of Accord, or should I say Certificial is a member. And as a result of that, we're able to create what we call dynamic COIs. And it's really, really interesting to see how all of this works, because as the data flows and as the data is current, the documents that are there to be the actual evidence is always up to date and also always intact. And it doesn't require a physical person to create those documents or process them, which is what goes on right now. And there's tons of FTEs being assigned to creating and processing those documents. We get to eliminate all of that and repurpose that talent to do more impactful, more important things for our companies.
All right, Peter, it was very interesting to talk to you about this issue and to know about your company. So I wish you a great success, you personally and your company, and hope we can meet again in a few months, maybe, and see maybe specific to do some discussion about a specific topic on deep dive.
Yeah, that'd be great for us. I appreciate you having me. I thank all the listeners for their time, and I look forward to definitely continuing the discussion in the future again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.